The alarm on the bridge of the eternal dawn cut through the quiet hum of deep space like a knife. Captain Dae-hyun looked up from his morning reports, his coffee still steaming in the zero-gravity cup. The red warning light meant only one thing, an emergency transmission from the outer rim. "Sir, we're getting a signal from the HFY system," said Communications Officer Hye-jin from her station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls, trying to clean up the static-filled message. "It's very weak and breaking up badly." Dae-hyun stood and walked over to her station. The HFY system had been dark for 6 months. The Galactic Federation had marked it as a total loss after reports of hostile alien attacks. No ships were supposed to be out there anymore. "Can you clear it up?" he asked. Hye-jin worked for several minutes, her face tight with concentration. Slowly, a voice began to come through the static. It was rough and desperate, like someone who hadn't slept in days. "This is Research Station Delta 7. Anyone receiving? Jin Woo here. If my brother gets this message." The transmission cut out for several seconds, then came back stronger. "The canyon. You have to find the Canyon of Whispers. Coordinates follow. Remember what Father told us about never giving up." Dae-hyun's blood went cold. Jin Woo was his younger brother, a xenoarchaeologist who had been studying ancient alien ruins in the Outer Rim. The last official report said his research team had been killed in an alien attack 6 months ago, but here was his voice, weak but alive. The coordinates came through clearly, despite the static. Then Jin Woo's voice returned one more time, barely, a whisper. "The ship is waiting. Your real mission. Remember." Then nothing but empty space static. Dae-hyun stared at the communication panel for a long moment. His brother was alive. Somehow, against all odds, Jin Woo had survived whatever happened in the HFY system. But what did he mean about a real mission? "What ship was waiting, sir?" Hye-jin looked up at him with concern. "Should I report this to Federation Command?" "No." The word came out harder than Dae-hyun intended. "Not yet. We need to know more first." He knew what Federation Command would say. The HFY system was off limits, too dangerous. His brother was probably dead, and this was just an old recording bouncing around space. They would tell him to ignore it and continue his patrol route, but Dae-hyun knew his brother's voice. This wasn't an old recording. Jin Woo was alive and needed help. "Hye-jin, gather a small team. We're going to investigate this signal. Sir, the Federation has the HFY system marked as a no-go zone. I'm not leaving my brother out. There." Dae-hyun's voice was quiet, but firm. "Get me So-ra from medical and Min-ho from engineering. Tell them to pack for a dangerous mission." An hour later, the 4 of them sat in the small briefing room. So-ra was a combat medic who had served with Dae-hyun for 3 years. She was tough and smart, the kind of person you wanted watching your back in a fight. Min-ho was young but brilliant with anything mechanical. He could fix a broken engine with spare parts and determination. The official reports say the HFY system was hit by unknown hostile forces, Dae-hyun explained, showing them the star charts. "All research stations went dark, no survivors." "But your brother's message suggests otherwise," So-ra said. She had read the transcript twice. "What do you think happened out there?" "I don't know, but Jin Woo mentioned a canyon and some kind of ship. He said something about a real mission." Dae-hyun looked at each of them. "I'm not ordering anyone to come with me. This is against direct Federation orders. If we get caught, we could all face court-martial." Min-ho spoke up first. "I'm in. No one gets left behind, right? That's what you always say." So-ra nodded. "I've heard stories about the Outer Rim research stations. If there are survivors out there, they'll need medical help." Hye-jin was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "Someone needs to handle communications. Besides, I'm curious about what your brother found out there." 2 hours later, they were in the fast scout ship Pioneer, breaking away from the main fleet. Dae-hyun had filed a false flight plan claiming they were investigating asteroid mining reports in a nearby system. It would buy them maybe 2 days before anyone realized where they had really gone. The journey to Kefros 7 took 18 hours at maximum jump speed. As they got closer to the system, their sensors began picking up strange readings. There were energy signatures that didn't match any known technology, and space itself seemed to bend and twist in unusual ways. "Captain," Min-ho called from his engineering station. "I'm reading massive gravitational anomalies throughout the system. Whatever happened here, it changed the basic physics of local space." "Any signs of the research stations?" Dae-hyun asked. Hai-jin shook her head. "Nothing on standard frequencies. But I am picking up some kind of low-level energy pulse coming from the planet's surface. It's very faint, but it matches the frequency of Jinwoo's transmission." As they approached Kefros 7, the planet looked wrong. The surface was scarred with massive canyons that seemed to glow with their own light. Storms of strange energy swept across the continents, and the northern hemisphere was covered in what looked like glass. "That's not natural," So-ra said, studying the planet scans. Something turned huge sections of the surface into crystal. Suddenly, every alarm on the ship began screaming at once. A pulse of energy, invisible but powerful, hit the Pioneer like a giant fist. The ship's engines died instantly. Emergency power flickered on and off. "We're losing everything!" Min-ho shouted over the noise of failing systems. "Hull breach in! Sections 3 and 7. Life support is failing. Emergency landing procedures," Dae-hyun ordered, fighting to control the ship as it fell toward the planet. "Everyone strap in!" The Pioneer hit the planet's surface hard, sliding across the crystalline ground for nearly a kilometer before finally stopping. Smoke filled the cabin. Sparks flew from damaged control panels. When the emergency lights finally came on, Dae-hyun looked around at his team. So-ra had a cut on her forehead but was conscious. Min-ho was checking the engineering readouts with shaking hands. Hye-jin was trying to get the communications array working. "Status report," Dae-hyun said, unstrapping himself from his chair. "The ship is finished," Min-ho said grimly. "Main engines are completely destroyed. Life support might last 6 hours. Communications are down." "But we're alive," So-ra added, checking everyone for injuries. "And according to the navigation system, we're only about 50 kilometers from those coordinates your brother sent." Dae-hyun looked out through the cracked viewport at the alien landscape. Strange creatures moved in the distance, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. This was going to be the hardest mission of his life. "Then we walk," he said simply. "We find Jinwoo, and we figure out what's really happening here." He had no idea that this crash landing was just the beginning of a test that would determine the fate of the entire galaxy. Dae-hyun woke up face down in the crystalline sand, his head pounding like someone had hit him with a hammer. The crash had thrown him clear of the ship, and now he was alone in a landscape that looked like the surface of an alien hell. The Pioneer was nowhere to be seen. Looking around, he spotted a trail of twisted metal and scattered debris leading off into the distance. The crash had been worse than he remembered. Much worse. His survival suit was damaged but still working. The heads-up display showed external temperature at 47 degrees Celsius, with atmospheric pressure lower than Earth normal. The air was breathable but full of strange particles that made his throat burn. More importantly, his emergency rations showed only 3 days of food and water. After that, he would be on his own. Dae-hyun activated his suit's communication system and tried to contact his team. "So-ra, Min-ho, Hye-jin, anyone out there?" Nothing but static answered him. Either their radios were damaged or they were too far away to reach. He checked his navigation system. The coordinates Jinwoo had sent were still about 48 kilometers to the south. In this terrain, with his damaged suit, that might as well be on the other side of the galaxy. But Dae-hyun had not survived 15 years in the Federation military by giving up when things looked impossible. He started walking. The first day was the worst. The ground was covered with razor-sharp crystal formations that cut through the soles of his boots. Strange plants grew between the crystals, plants that moved when he got too close and released clouds of acid that ate through his suit's outer layer. By evening, his left leg was badly cut from a fall onto the crystal spikes. His water supply was already down by half because the suit's recycling system was damaged, but he had covered almost 8 kilometers, and he was still alive. The second day brought new problems. Creatures began following him. At first, he only caught glimpses of them in his peripheral vision. Things that looked like living glass, moving through the crystal formations like sharks through water. They seemed to be studying him, learning his patterns. Then they attacked. The first creature came at him from behind, moving so fast it was just a blur of crystal teeth and claws. Dae-hyun spun around and fired his plasma pistol in one smooth motion. The blast shattered the creature into 1,000 glittering pieces, but the sound attracted more of them. For the next hour, he fought a running battle through the crystal maze. The creatures were fast and smart, but they were also fragile. Every shot that connected destroyed them completely. The problem was that he only had 2 power cells for his weapon, and he was burning through them quickly. When the attack finally ended, Dae-hyun counted the remains of 12 creatures scattered around him. His weapon was down to 30% power, and he was bleeding from multiple cuts. But he was alive, and the creatures seemed to have learned to keep their distance. That night, as he tried to sleep in a cave formed by overlapping crystal sheets, he found something that made his heart race. Pressed into the crystal wall was Sora's medical kit. It was damaged and most of the supplies were gone, but it meant she had been here. She had survived the crash too. The third day was when the real test began. Dae-hyun woke up to find that gravity was wrong. His suit's sensors showed that local gravity was fluctuating wildly, sometimes dropping to almost nothing, sometimes spiking to 3 times Earth normal. Walking became a nightmare of careful timing and desperate balance. During one period of low gravity, he managed to jump across a canyon that would have been impossible to cross normally. During a high-gravity spike, he was pinned to the ground for almost an hour, unable to move, while acid rain fell from the purple sky above. But even in this impossible place, he kept finding signs of his team. Minho's navigation beacon, still, transmitting its location signal from the top of a crystal cliff. Pieces of Hyejin's communication equipment scattered across what looked like an ancient battlefield, surrounded by the remains of creatures unlike anything he had ever seen. Each discovery drove him forward. His team was out there somewhere, still alive, still fighting, and that meant he had to keep going too. On the 4th day, his food ran out. On the 5th day, his water recycling system finally gave up completely. But Dae-hyun had been trained for survival in the worst possible conditions, and this planet had taught him a few things about its weird ecosystem. The crystal plants, he discovered, stored water in their root systems. It tasted terrible and burned his throat, but it kept him alive. Some of the smaller crystal creatures, when cooked with his plasma pistol set to low power, were actually edible. Not good, but edible. The storms were the worst part. Every day, around noon, the sky would turn dark and energy would begin crackling through the air. Lightning that wasn't quite lightning would strike the ground, turning sand into glass and glass back into sand. The air itself would become thick and hard to breathe. During these storms, Dae-hyun learned to hide deep in the crystal caves. But even there, he could feel the energy pressing down on him, making his bones ache and his vision blur. Whatever had happened to this planet, it had changed the basic rules of how things worked. On the 6th day, he reached the edge of a vast canyon system. His navigation showed that Jinwoo's coordinates were somewhere down there, in the twisting maze of crystal corridors and impossible rock formations. But looking down into the canyon, Dae-hyun could see things moving that were bigger and stranger than anything he had faced so far. He was exhausted, injured, and running on pure determination. His suit was more patches than original material. His weapon was down to 5% power. Any sane person would have given up days ago, but Dae-hyun was not just any person. He was human. And humans did not abandon their own. As he prepared to descend into the canyon, he activated his suit's emergency recorder. If something happened to him down there, maybe someone would find the recording someday and know that he had tried. "This is Captain Dae-hyun of the Federation ship Eternal Dawn," he said into the device. "I have survived 6 days in hostile territory to reach these coordinates. My brother Jin-woo is somewhere in this canyon system, along with whatever answers we came here to find. I don't know what's waiting for me down there, but I'm going in anyway, because that's what humans do. We don't leave our people behind, no matter what." He turned off the recorder and started climbing down into the canyon. Behind him, the crystal creatures watched from a safe distance, their glittering eyes reflecting the strange light that came from the canyon's depths. They had learned something important over the past 6 days. This human was different from other creatures they had encountered. Other beings ran when things became too dangerous. Other beings gave up when the odds became impossible. But this human just kept going. No matter how badly he was hurt, no matter how impossible the situation became, he kept moving toward his goal. It was a kind of stubbornness that the creatures had never seen before. As Dae-hyun disappeared into the depths of the canyon, the creatures began to follow at a distance. They wanted to see what would happen when an unstoppable human met whatever was waiting at the bottom of this alien maze. They had a feeling it was going to be very interesting. The canyon was like nothing Dae-hyun had ever seen in his 15 years of exploring alien worlds. The walls stretched up so high that he could not see the top, and they seemed to shimmer with their own light. But strangest of all were the sounds. Every few minutes the canyon would whisper. Not the wind through rocks, but actual whispers, like voices speaking in a language just beyond understanding. The sounds seemed to come from the walls themselves, as if the stone was alive and trying to communicate. Dae-hyun's suit sensors went crazy every time the whispers started. Energy readings spiked off the charts, gravity fluctuated wildly, and his communication system picked up signals that his equipment could not identify. Whatever was making these sounds was using technology far beyond anything the Federation had ever encountered. After 2 hours of careful climbing down the canyon walls, Dae-hyun reached a ledge that looked like it had been carved by intelligent hands. The surface was too smooth, too perfectly shaped to be natural. And there, set back in an alcove that provided protection from the energy storms, was something that made his heart race. Jin-woo's research camp. But it was not what he had expected to find. The basic structure was there, the emergency shelter, the scientific equipment, the power generators that his brother always used in the field. But everything had been changed, upgraded with technology that Dae-hyun did not recognize. The shelter had been expanded with materials that looked like living metal. The power generators were connected to crystalline structures that hummed with energy far beyond their original specifications. Most surprising of all, the scientific equipment had been integrated with devices that seemed to be listening to the canyon's whispers and translating them into streams of data. Dae-hyun approached the camp carefully, his weapon ready. There were no signs of recent human activity, but the equipment was still running. Whatever had happened here, it had been designed to continue working without supervision. Inside the shelter, he found Jin-woo's personal computer still active. The screen showed data streams flowing in patterns that hurt to look at directly. But when Dae-hyun touched the keyboard, the display changed to something he could understand: his brother's research logs. The first few entries were normal. Jin-woo describing the canyon, taking measurements, trying to understand the geological formations. But as Dae-hyun read further, the entries became stranger and more excited. Day 12. The whispers are not random. There's a pattern, a structure. It's like someone is broadcasting information, but in a format we don't understand yet. Day 18. I've made contact with the source of the transmissions. The canyon itself is artificial, built by a race that disappeared long ago. They call themselves the Builders, and they left behind a network of these sites across the galaxy. Day 23. The Builders were not destroyed by war or disaster. They left. Something was coming, something so terrible that an entire galactic civilization chose to run rather than fight. But before they left, they built defenses, hidden weapons, test sites to find worthy inheritors of their technology. Day 30. I understand now. The attacks on the research stations, the hostile encounters that the Federation reported. They were not attacks at all. They were tests. The Builder sites have been measuring us, studying us, waiting to see if we're ready. Dae-hyun's hands shook as he read the final entry, dated just 3 days ago. Day 45. They're coming. The enemy the Builders fled from is finally arriving in our galaxy, but the tests are complete and the results are remarkable. Humans are compatible with Builder technology in ways no other species has ever been. Our neural patterns, our determination, our refusal to give up. It all makes us perfect candidates for the Builder's legacy. I've sent a message to Dae-hyun. If anyone can make it through the trials to reach this place, it's my brother. The ship is waiting for him at the bottom of the canyon, but first he has to prove he's worthy. The computer screen went dark, and new lights began to glow throughout the shelter. Panels that Dae-hyun had not noticed before slid open, revealing technology that seemed to be part machine and part living crystal. A voice spoke from hidden speakers, and somehow he understood it even though it was not speaking any human language. Human. Designation Dae-hyun, brother to researcher Jin-woo. Your arrival was predicted. Your journey through the trials has been observed and evaluated. You have demonstrated the core traits that mark your species as suitable inheritors. Persistence, in the face of impossible odds, refusal to abandon your companions, and the ability to adapt to hostile environments. The Canyon of Whispers is not a geological formation. It is a testing facility designed to identify beings capable of operating Builder technology. Your species calls it determination. We call it the spark, the quality that separates those who survive from those who transcend. Dae-hyun found his voice. Where is my brother? Where is my team? Safe. Waiting. The trials you have completed alone were necessary to verify your individual worthiness. But the greater challenge requires unity, cooperation between your kind and our technology. Proceed to the canyon's depth. The ship awaits, new. Lights appeared along the canyon walls, forming a clear path downward. But as Dae-hyun prepared to follow them, his suit's communication system suddenly came alive with familiar voices. Dae-hyun? Is that you? Sora's voice, tired but alive, came through the static. Captain, we're reading your signal. Minho's excited voice joined her. We're about 2 kilometers south of your position in some kind of underground facility. The alien technology here is incredible, Hyejin added. It's been keeping us alive, teaching us things about their civilization. But it's been waiting for you to arrive before it would show us everything. Dae-hyun smiled for the first time. In a week, his team was alive. His brother was alive. Whatever this was, they would face it together. I'm coming to you, he said into his communicator. Follow the lights. There's something down here we need to see. As he began the final descent into the canyon's depths, Dae-hyun thought about what the Builder voice had said. The trials had been designed to test human determination. Everything he had survived, the crash, the crystal creatures, the energy storms, the impossible terrain, it had all been a test. And apparently, humans were the first species to pass. The canyon walls grew brighter as he climbed down, and the whispers became clearer. Now he could almost understand them. They were not just random sounds. They were messages, instructions, warnings left by a civilization that had faced the ultimate test and chosen to run rather than fight. But they had not run without hope. They had built these testing sites and hidden weapons throughout the galaxy, waiting for a species with the right combination of traits to inherit their legacy. Humans, with their stubborn refusal to give up, their loyalty to each other, and their ability to adapt to anything the universe threw at them, had finally proven themselves worthy. At the bottom of the canyon, Dae-hyun could see lights that were clearly artificial and structures that defied everything he thought he knew about physics. Somewhere down there, his brother and his team were waiting with answers that would change everything. The real mission was about to begin. The lights led Dae-hyun to a section of the canyon wall that looked exactly like solid rock until he approached it. Then the stone simply melted away, revealing a tunnel that glowed with soft blue light. His suit sensors showed that the air inside was perfectly breathable and at comfortable temperature. As he walked through the tunnel, Dae-hyun noticed that the walls were covered with symbols that seemed to shift and change when he was not looking directly at them. The builder technology was not just advanced, it was alive, responding to his presence and somehow learning from his thoughts. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that took his breath away. The space was easily the size of a Federation starship hangar, but instead of metal and concrete, everything was made of the same living crystal technology he had seen in Jinwoo's camp. Streams of energy flowed through transparent tubes in the walls, and holographic displays showed star charts of the entire galaxy, and there, standing near a control station that seemed to be growing out of the floor itself, was his brother. Jinwoo! Dae-hyun ran toward him, relief flooding through his body. His brother looked older and thinner than when he had last seen him, but he was alive and unharmed. "Big brother," Jinwoo said with a tired smile. "I knew you would make it. Though I have to admit, the builders were not entirely certain. They said the trials would break most beings. But humans are stubborn that way." Before Dae-hyun could ask what he meant, familiar voices called out from across the chamber. Sora, Minho, and Hye-jin emerged from behind a massive crystalline structure, all of them alive and well. They looked different somehow, more alert, their eyes brighter, as if they had been learning things that had changed their understanding of the universe. "Captain!" Sora reached him first, and for a moment the professional military facade dropped as they embraced. "We thought you were dead when the ship crashed and we could not find you." "The builder system separated us on purpose," Minho explained as he and Hye-jin joined them. "Each of us had to face our own trials. Sora fought through a medical crisis that would have killed 100 patients. Hye-jin had to decode alien languages while under attack by automated defenses. I had to repair technology that works on principles that should not be possible." "And you," Hye-jin added, looking at Dae-hyun with respect, "survived a week in the deadliest environment any of us have ever seen. Alone." Jinwoo gestured toward the massive holographic displays around them. "The builders have been watching our species for decades. Every time humans encountered one of their sites, they learned more about us. What makes us different? What makes us special?" "Special how?" Dae-hyun asked, though part of him was already beginning to understand. A new voice answered him, coming from speakers hidden throughout the chamber. But this time it was not the mechanical translation he had heard before. This voice was warm, almost human, as if the builder technology had learned to speak in a way that felt natural to them. "Your species possesses a combination of traits that we have never encountered in our millions of years of existence," the voice said. "Individual determination coupled with absolute loyalty to your group. The ability to adapt to any environment while maintaining your core values. And most importantly, the refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat is mathematically certain. The holographic displays shifted, showing images of other species the builders had encountered. Each one was advanced, intelligent, and sophisticated, and each one had failed the trials that humans had passed. We designed the tests to be impossible, the voice continued. We wanted to find beings who would attempt the impossible anyway. Most species, when faced with odds that cannot be overcome, make rational decisions to preserve themselves. Humans make irrational decisions to preserve others. Sora stepped forward. That's why you separated us during the crash. You wanted to see if Daehyun would come after us even when it meant facing certain death. And why you put each of us through individual trials, Minho added, to see if we would use our skills to help others rather than just survive. The displays changed again, showing star charts with red markers spreading across the galaxy like an infection. The enemy we fled from has finally arrived in your galaxy, the voice explained. They call themselves the Devourers, though they are not truly alive in any sense that you would understand. They consume entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty void behind them. The builders ran because fighting them seemed hopeless, Jinwoo said. But they left behind weapons and defenses hidden throughout the galaxy. Technology that can stop the Devourers, but only if operated by beings with the right mental patterns. Beings like humans, Daehyun said, understanding flooding through him. Exactly. Your neural structure allows you to interface with our technology in ways that even we could not. When a human mind connects with builder systems, the combination becomes something greater than either part alone. Hee-jin had been studying the displays while they talked. These red markers, how long do we have? The advanced scouts have already reached the outer rim. The main force will arrive within 1 standard year, but the galaxy is not defenseless anymore. We have been preparing for this moment, training humans to operate our technology, building an alliance between your people and our systems. A new section of the chamber began to glow, and the floor opened to reveal a ramp leading down to an even larger space below. Through the opening, Daehyun could see the outline of a massive ship, easily 10 times the size of the Federation's largest dreadnoughts. The ship I mentioned in my message, Jinwoo said. It's been waiting here for 1,000 years, but it was incomplete. It needed human neural patterns to finish its construction, and a human commander who had proven worthy through the trials. Sora was staring at the ship in amazement. That's what this was all about, not just rescuing Jinwoo. You were meant to find this place, to prove that humans could handle builder technology. The Federation knows about the builder sites, Minho said quietly. They've known for years but could never access them. That's why they were so interested in the Outer Rim research stations. And why they were so quick to write off the Kefro system when the trials began. Hye-jin added. They knew something was happening here, but they did not know what. The voice spoke again, with what almost sounded like satisfaction. Your mission, Captain Daehyun, was never simply to rescue your brother. Your mission is to save your galaxy. The ship below has been configured to your neural patterns. It will respond to human leadership in ways that our original technology never could. Daehyun looked at his team, then at his brother, then at the massive ship waiting below. A week ago, he had been a patrol captain following routine orders. Now he was being asked to command technology that could save or doom an entire galaxy. What makes you so sure we can do this? He asked. What makes humans so special compared to all the other species you've encountered? The answer came not from the speakers, but from Jinwoo. Because we're here, his brother said simply. Because when faced with impossible odds and certain death, we did not run. We did not hide. We did not make rational decisions based on probability of survival. We came anyway, because leaving our people behind is not an option. And that, the builder voice added, is why you will succeed where we failed. The Devourers expect their enemies to make rational choices. They have never encountered a species that makes irrational choices based on loyalty and hope. As they walked down the ramp toward the waiting ship, Dae-hyun felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. But he also felt something else. Excitement. For the first time in his life, he was going to be part of something that really mattered. The ship was waiting. The galaxy was in danger. And humanity was about to show the universe what they were really capable of. The ship was unlike anything Dae-hyun had ever seen, even in his wildest dreams. As they walked through its corridors, the walls seemed to pulse with life, responding to their presence with gentle light and warmth. The builder technology was not just advanced, it was alive in a way that made traditional human ships seem like crude metal boxes. "It's been growing for 1,000 years, Jin-woo explained as they walked toward what appeared to be the bridge. The builders designed it to complete itself once it detected compatible neural patterns. When the first human research teams reached the outer rim, it began the final construction phase. The bridge was a vast circular chamber with no obvious controls or displays. Instead, the entire space was filled with flowing streams of energy that formed shapes and patterns in response to their movements. When Dae-hyun stepped into the center of the chamber, the energy streams began to converge around him. "Place your hand on the neural interface," the builder voice instructed. A crystalline panel rose from the floor, its surface warm and slightly soft to the touch. The moment Dae-hyun made contact, his mind exploded with information. Star charts, tactical data, weapon specifications, and ship systems flooded through his consciousness. But instead of being overwhelming, it felt natural, as if he had always known these things and was simply remembering them. More importantly, he could suddenly see the galaxy through the ship's sensors, and what he saw made his blood run cold. 3. Red markers he had seen on the displays were not just warnings. They were real-time tracking of enemy forces. The Devourers had already consumed 3 entire star systems in the outer rim, leaving nothing behind but empty space where billions of beings had once lived. "My God," he whispered. "They're not just destroying planets. They're unmaking reality itself." Through the neural link, the ship's vast database opened to his mind. The builder's final records, hidden for millions of years, told the true story of their civilization's end. The Devourers were not a species in any normal sense. They were something far worse, a force of nature that had learned to think. They moved through the universe like a plague, consuming not just matter and energy, but the fundamental forces that held reality together. "They come from the void between galaxies," Jin-woo said, his voice tight with fear. "Spaces where nothing should be able to exist, but they made themselves exist there, and now they're hungry for places where existence is easier." The ship's records showed world after world falling to the Devourer advance, not destroyed in battle, but simply ceasing to be, as if they had never existed at all. Even the builders, with all their incredible technology, had been able to do nothing but run. "But you found something they missed," Sora said, studying the tactical displays that now surrounded them. "Something they could not consume." The ship responded to her words by displaying a new set of star charts. These showed builder installations hidden throughout the galaxy, weapons platforms, shield generators, and command centers that had been constructed in the deep places where space itself was twisted and strange. The builders built their final defenses in areas where reality was already unstable, Hyejin realized. Places where the Devourers could not easily feed. "More than that," Minho added, his engineer's mind grasping the implications. "They built them to be operated by beings who think differently than they did. The builders were logical, rational. They made decisions based on mathematics and probability. The ship's neural interface pulsed with agreement. The Devourers learned to predict and counter builder tactics because builder thinking was predictable. But human thinking is not predictable. Humans make decisions based on emotion, loyalty, and hope. Variables that cannot be mathematically modeled." Dae-hyun felt the ship's weapon systems coming online, responding to his thoughts and emotions. The firepower at his disposal was beyond anything the Federation had ever dreamed of. But even more important was the network of other human-operated builder installations throughout the galaxy. "How many humans are already connected to this network?" he asked. 47 installations are now under human command," the ship replied. "Each one operated by humans who have passed the trials and proven their worthiness. Your species calls them heroes. We call them hope." The tactical display updated again, showing human-controlled positions throughout the galaxy. Each one was a fortress that could reshape local space-time, armed with weapons that could unmake matter at the subatomic level. Together, they formed a defensive network that the builders had never been able to complete. "But defense alone will not be enough," the ship warned. "The Devourers adapt quickly. They will learn to counter these weapons given enough time. Victory requires an offensive strategy that they cannot predict." Dae-hyun studied the enemy positions, feeling the ship's tactical systems merge with his own military training. The Devourers were advancing in a predictable pattern, consuming star systems methodically as they moved toward the galaxy's populated core. They think like the Builders did, he realized. Logical, efficient, rational. They're following the optimal path for resource consumption, which means they won't expect us to do something completely irrational, Sora said with a growing smile, like attacking their main force directly instead of defending our positions. Minho added, or using weapons in ways they were never designed to be used, Hyejin suggested. The ship's excitement was palpable, its energy patterns brightening as it processed these very human tactical concepts. "Yes," it said. "This is why you were chosen. The Builders would never have considered such approaches because they violate optimal strategic doctrine." Jinwoo was studying the deep space sensor data. "The main Devourer force is still 6 months out from the populated core systems, but their advanced scouts are already adapting to our defensive positions. We need to move fast." Dae-hyun felt the ship's eagerness to act, its weapons hungry for targets after 1,000 years of waiting. But more than that, he felt the network of other human commanders across the galaxy, each one ready to follow his lead into a battle that would determine the fate of everything they knew. "Send a message to all human-controlled installations," he ordered. "Tell them we're not going to wait for the enemy to come to us. We're going to hit them where they don't expect it, with everything we have." "And if we fail?" Sora asked quietly. Dae-hyun smiled, feeling the ship's weapon systems reaching full power around him. "Then we'll fail doing something so crazy that the universe will remember humans tried." The ship began to move, rising from its hidden chamber beneath the canyon and emerging into space for the first time in a millennium. Behind them, across the galaxy, 46 other human commanders felt the call to battle and began moving their own impossible weapons toward an enemy that had never known defeat. The Devourers had consumed 1,000 galaxies by being logical, efficient, and predictable. They were about to learn what happened when logic met human stubbornness, and they were going to learn it the hard way. 6 months had passed since Dae-hyun first stepped aboard the builder ship that now bore the name Human Defiance. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have imagined when he first received Jin Woo's desperate transmission. The revelation of the Devourer threat had done something that centuries of Federation diplomacy had failed to achieve. It had united every intelligent species in the galaxy under a single banner, not because they suddenly loved each other, but because they finally understood that survival required putting aside old grudges and working together, and somehow, impossibly, they had chosen to follow human leadership. Contact from the Altarian fleet, Hyejin reported from her position at the communications station. The builder technology had enhanced her abilities until she could translate between dozens of species in real time. Admiral Kethvara says his people are ready for the final assault. The Crystalline Collective is also reporting ready status, Minho added. His integration with the ship's engineering systems had turned him into something like a wizard of technology, able to coordinate repairs and modifications across the entire Allied fleet. All human-controlled installations are at maximum power. Sora looked up from her medical station, where she was coordinating field hospitals across 36 worlds. Casualty reports from the advance engagements are lower than projected. The new healing technology is working better than we hoped. Dae-hyun nodded, but his attention was focused on the massive tactical display that showed the current state of the war. The past 6 months had been a campaign unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of the defensive actions that every species expected, the human commanders had done exactly what they had promised: attack the Devourers in ways that made no logical sense. They had used mining equipment as weapons, turned cargo ships into bombs, and deployed defensive shields as offensive battering rams. They had attacked superior enemy forces with inferior numbers, launched assaults when they should have retreated, and won battles by doing things that violated every principle of military strategy. And it had worked. The Devourers, for the first time in their existence across multiple galaxies, had found themselves fighting an enemy they could not predict. Every time they adapted to human tactics, the humans changed their approach completely. Every time they prepared for logical, strategic decisions, the humans did something that made no sense at all. Status report from Jin Woo's research division, Hyojin said, reading from her displays. The quantum destabilizer network is complete. All installations are linked and ready for synchronized firing. Jin Woo had taken command of a network of builder research facilities, turning them into the largest scientific project in galactic history. Working with scientists from every allied species, they had developed weapons that could attack the Devourers, fundamental ability to exist in normal space-time. And the enemy fleet? Dae-hyun asked. Still approaching on their predicted course, Min-ho reported. They're maintaining formation exactly as our models suggested. The Devourers are still thinking logically even after everything we've thrown at them. That was the key insight that had changed everything. The Devourers were incredibly powerful and adaptable, but they were still fundamentally logical beings. They made optimal decisions based on available information, but humans had learned to make decisions that were optimal for reasons the Devourers could not understand. "All fleet commanders, this is Captain Dae-hyun," he said into the communication system that now linked thousands of ships across dozens of species. "Begin final approach to the target zone. Remember, we only get one chance at this." The plan was insane by any rational measure. Instead of defending the galaxy's core worlds, the Allied fleet was going to attack the main Devourer force head-on. Not with superior numbers or better technology, but with weapons that used the Devourer's own power against them. The quantum destabilizer network would create a cascade failure in the space-time distortions that the Devourers used to feed. But it required getting close enough to the enemy fleet to target their core ships, and maintaining the targeting lock long enough for the effect to propagate through their entire force. It was a plan that required perfect timing, incredible courage, and a willingness to risk everything on a single moment of hope. In other words, it was a perfectly human plan. "Enemy fleet is responding to our approach," Sora reported. "They're moving to intercept us, just as predicted." "All ships, begin the dance," Dae-hyun ordered. What followed was the strangest battle in galactic history. The Allied fleet scattered. In seemingly random directions, individual ships attacking Devourer positions that appeared to have no strategic value. From the outside, it looked like complete chaos, a desperate and futile last stand. But there was a pattern to the chaos, a method to the madness that only humans could have conceived. Each apparently random attack was designed to force the Devourers into specific positions, herding them like sheep toward the targeting zone where the quantum destabilizers could lock onto their core ships. "They're taking the bait," Min-ho said, with excitement. "Devourer main force is moving exactly where we want them. Lock established on primary targets." Jin Woo's voice came through the communication system. "Quantum destabilizer network is ready to fire on your command." Daehyun watched the tactical display as thousands of ships from dozens of species threw themselves against an enemy that had never known defeat. They were losing ships, good people dying to maintain the illusion of chaotic desperation. But they were also winning, forcing the Devourers into a trap that their logical minds could not recognize. "All ships, final phase," Daehyun ordered. "Everyone knows what to do." The human Defiance led the charge directly at the largest Devourer ship, a thing of impossible size that bent space around itself like a living black hole. Every weapon on the Allied fleet opened fire, not to destroy the enemy, but to keep them focused on the battle while the real weapon charged to full power. "Destabilizer network at maximum charge," Jinwoo reported. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. The quantum destabilizers fired simultaneously across dozens of star systems, creating a wave of energy that moved faster than light itself. Where the energy touched Devourer ships, their ability to exist in normal space-time simply stopped working. One by one, the ships that had consumed entire galaxies began to fade from existence, not destroyed but simply ceasing to be able to maintain their presence in reality. "It's working!" Hyojin shouted. "Enemy fleet is destabilizing across the entire formation." But the Devourers had one final surprise. As their main force collapsed, they activated a weapon of their own, a reality bomb that would unmake everything within 100 light-years, including the Allied fleet. "All ships, emergency jump," Daehyun ordered, but he knew it was too late. The reality bomb was already activating, and there was no time to escape its range. That was when the Allied fleet did the most human thing of all. Instead of running, they moved closer together, linking their shields and pooling their defensive energy. It should not have been enough to stop a weapon designed to unmake reality itself. Mathematics said they would all die, but mathematics had not accounted for the fact that 47 different species had learned to think like humans. They had learned to hope when hope was irrational, to fight when fighting was futile, and to stand together when standing together made no logical sense. The reality bomb hit the combined fleet defense and stopped. Not because the shields were strong enough, but because the beings behind those shields refused to stop existing. They had made an irrational decision to continue being real, and somehow, impossibly, reality listened. When the energy faded, the Allied fleet was still there, damaged, exhausted, but alive. And around them, empty space stretched where the Devourer fleet had been. "Enemy fleet completely eliminated," Sora reported in a voice filled with wonder. "No Devourer signatures remaining in sensor range." "This is Jinwoo to all ships," came his brother's voice over the communication system. "Quantum destabilizer effect is propagating back toward their home void. We've cut them off from this galaxy permanently." Daehyun slumped in his command chair, finally allowing himself to feel the exhaustion of 6 months of impossible war. Around him, the bridge crew of the human Defiance began to smile as reports came in from across the galaxy. The Devourers were gone. Not just defeated, but erased from existence in this region of space. "Captain," Hyejin said quietly, "we're receiving congratulations from every species in the Allied fleet. They want to know what we should do next." Daehyun thought about that question. The galaxy was safe, the enemy was defeated, and humanity had somehow become the leaders of the greatest alliance in galactic history. What came next was up to them. "Tell them," he said finally, "that we do what humans have always done. We explore, we build, we help those who need help, and we never give up on anyone. The galaxy is safe now, and we're going to make sure it stays that way." As the Allied fleet began its journey home to worlds that would never again fear the darkness between the stars, Daehyun reflected on the impossible chain of events that had brought them here. He had survived everything to reach that canyon, thinking he was on a simple rescue mission, but the ship had been waiting with his true mission all along.